Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me today are Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells. We're the editors of Manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News, and we each have more than 20 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You could also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can get a notification and join us when we go live every Thursday. Jeff, how you doing this week?
I'm all right, man. How about you?
I'm doing good. You know, we had Matthew reach out just before to make sure that he made the live chat, and I was just really excited to hear somebody like that excited to get in and start mixing it up.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Anna, how you doing this week?
Good.
Yeah? Excited Matt's here too?
Yes, I always love when we have people watching live.
Yeah.
Feels like we're actually doing something.
Well, I guess I should say Matthew, not Matt, because, you know, when people take liberties, like you did this morning, calling me Dave. Mm-hmm. And
I thought
David.
that's what we were going with.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to stop that at the door.
I think it's Dave now.
Window shut.
I had Dave.
Oh, man. I don't know if this desk is too heavy to flip over, but we'll find out.
So the backstory is someone sent an email to the both of us, and they sent it to Dave at IEN.com, so David didn't receive it. So I told him about it,
Well, like
and he was pleased.
One of the captains for one of our softball teams also refers to him as Dave.
And it's great.
And I've never heard Dave complain about that.
I give
or correct him.
He is one of a handful of people that, because he he welcomed me into softball when I didn't have anywhere else to play. Like, okay, that's fine. So like I have some old friends that call me Dave. My family will call me Dave. Whatever, they're locked in. But as we saw recently when we were with some other people from softball and they started calling me Dave, it was like, excuse me for a second. I prefer David, but I happened to say that to the one person that was pretty confident. Let's say he had a couple that evening. He's just like, I don't care what you want to be called. I'm going to call you what I'm going to call you. And then I was just quiet for a while.
So we haven't known you long enough to call you Dave.
Yeah.
No.
How long do we have to stick around?
It was
before we get that.
What was the cutoff here?
Yeah.
No,
like
it was
movie rating or something.
Well, it was that is a good. No, it was because you guys have always called me David. So
we've always had to call you David.
Yeah, because that, you know, I like shut it down right away. You're just like, hey, Dave, glad you're working with us. And I'm like, me too. And I'd be even happier, Anna, when you called me David.
All right, David, let's move on.
Sounds good. Noted. This week, our sponsor is once again ShopVue, a CAI Solution. Managers and engineers face a wide variety of obstacles on the plant floor that weaken productivity. The root of these problems can often be tied to reliance on outdated data. Using yesterday's information to make today's decisions simply won't cut it. So download Benefits of Real-Time Production Monitoring in Manufacturing to find out why real-time production monitoring is becoming a must-have for manufacturers. And I see you shaking your head, nodding your head.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an important one.
Yeah, there's nothing I like less than yesterday's data.
No one wants that. Get your garbage old data out. All right. Well, if you're interested in checking that out, there's a link to it in the live chat and in the body copy. Our first story this week. Ford will pay you if your F-150 gets stolen. Ford is rolling out the Ford Security Package, a subscription model that offers top-notch security features like sending you a text when someone is tampering with your car. Another function, Start Inhibit, allows vehicle owners to disable their ignition from their phone even if the thief has the key. The package includes a hotline that's staffed 24/7 with agents who work with law enforcement to help track a stolen vehicle. And Ford is so confident in its ability to prevent your F-150 from being stolen that it's willing to pay you up to $2,500 to cover insurance deductibles should this vehicle be stolen. Now, the payout only happens if the vehicle is not recovered or is recovered but damaged. According to Car Scoops, Ford is initially rolling out the program in F-150s and a few Super Duty trims. After the free 1-year subscription, you pay $7.99 a month for this offer. Jeff, Another connection, another potential data vulnerability. Are automakers getting better at cinching up these potential security breach targets?
Well, I guess I'll start with some of the concerns I have before I go to because overall I think this is a good thing. I really do. But it is important, like you just alluded to remember that these doors swing both ways. And there have been a number of instances in the past where these types of apps, where you have communication coming from the vehicle to another place to the user, they're susceptible to being hacked and can be used for the exact opposite reason that they're in place in the first place. So I think it's going to be important for Ford to remember that they need to enforce some diligence here for the users. And although it's going to seem like it's going to inhibit more people from using it, it's going to make it better for all involved. So I'm talking about things like a firewall, which can slow down transmission of data. You still have to have that in place. Forcing users to use good usernames and passwords. That's also going to be kind of a pain for some people. Double factor authentication, all of these other things that are going to make the app itself secure against people using it against, keeping the vehicle safe. Those are all things that they're going to have to enforce, which is going to be very tempting to not do because they want more people to use it. Hey, they want their $8 along the way of helping to also keep vehicles from being stolen. So that is going to be important for Ford to keep in place. I think it's very interesting when you look at the tech, the way the app is set up, the way it's supposed to work. Mm-hmm. I was concerned initially when you have basically the ability to turn the ignition off. How do you turn that on and off? Like to me, that could seem like a real mechanical potential issue. Yeah. But the fact that it's, in theory, just a slide button on the app is pretty smooth. I mean, that's pretty cool, especially when you're looking at a truck potentially being your livelihood, depending on where you're parking it, what your job is, all of those different factors. This is a huge investment. So I think the app itself is cool. And I think just the fact that it's there or that it's being promoted and it's being thrown into the ether could also serve as a great deterrent. That's one of the things we talk about with cybersecurity on the industrial side. If somebody wants to hack in, with time, they might be able to do it, but the more things you put in their way, the less likely they are to focus on you and potentially go to somebody else. In this case, maybe they're going to go to a different vehicle. Yeah. If they're really bound on stealing something, maybe they are going to go to, the Chevy Silverado, which I was shocked. I think we had this one at 9 on the list of the most stolen vehicle. Oh. The Silverado was like number 4.
Oh, okay.
I was surprised that it was that much higher on the list just because the F-150 is more popular from a sales perspective. Yeah. But some of the speculation is that some of those apps that Chevy uses are more susceptible from a security perspective. So there's a lot of different things to take into place. Overall, I like it a lot.
So you're saying don't name it Jeff's brand spanking new F-150 so they know what they're which one to tap into?
I would say make sure the username isn't like your license plate or something like that. Make it a little bit tougher to figure out.
Okay. And one thing that I thought about, not necessarily for thieves, but also say that, you're a parent. And I mean, I know that it's a previous generation's sort of thought, but the idea of stealing your parents' keys and taking the car where they don't know it. All of a sudden I get an alert on my phone that says, hey, the Sienna's on the move, and I can just slide the, well, maybe call first and be like, hey, pull it over because I'm going to cut the engine. Yeah. But the idea that, you might have a little bit more security over a vehicle that maybe your kids have access to. I don't know. That was one thing I thought about.
For sure. But then, I thought of that too. But then, of course, my mind goes to like all the ways that this could be used for evil instead of good.
Oh, yeah.
Because, there are a lot of prospective scenarios where it could be really bad where a person with an app could disable the vehicle. Oh, yeah. And it might not just be a thief who has a key, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's lots of scenarios where like a domestic abuse situation or something where you could would not want a person to be able to I don't know. And of course these are like niche scenarios, but maybe your kid is somewhere and you're mad and you turn it off, but are they in a safe place? Yeah, where are they? It just seems like it feels like sort of indiscriminate. I don't know how much information you get about the vehicle. It just seems like kind of, I don't know. Not to mention Jeff's point about the system potentially being hacked. Could somebody do this to you if you have your key?
Well, that's when you were saying about it being nefarious. I was thinking if other people had access to this entire platform and all of a sudden brick all these F-150s, right? I mean, that's a real problem.
Could be, yeah. And secondly, I don't know if I necessarily think it's a solution in search of a problem because obviously people are getting their vehicles stolen. That's the thing. But disabling a vehicle after it's stolen is one thing, but if you can prevent it from being stolen to begin with, that's better, right? And if Ford has access to that technology already, this preventative stuff, then why do I have to pay you $8 for that? Like I just spent $100,000 on this truck, you know?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
To me, it just sort of rubs me the wrong way. You guys know how I feel about subscription services.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously, this is a direction where auto is headed. And as long as there's a tidy little revenue stream there, we're going to see more and more of that. For example, GM recently said that they think Super Cruise, their subscription service, could yield $2 billion in annual revenue by 2030.
Wow.
That's so much money, right?
Yeah.
Just completely fresh revenue stream to charge customers for features that, you maybe agree or not, but maybe it should already come on a fully loaded truck.
Yeah.
So, but, we're just going to have to get used to this because if people are paying it and they're making money on it, then we're going to be paying for navigation, heated seats, extra security, whatever that is.
Yeah.
The tamper alert that, maybe 5 years ago would just come on that vehicle is now not. So,
well, and I think that on things like this specifically, they hope you're doing the math like, okay, your deductible, let's say, is $2,500. You can pay $8 a month for a very long time to prevent that from happening and still, see it as like a potential insurance.
Sure. But I mean, like, that's like a different calculation. That's like a false choice. I feel like,
I'm trying to think because I completely agree with you. The whole idea that everything is going to be as a service in the next 10 years is just ridiculous. And I agree. If you're paying like more than $100,000 for a truck, you shouldn't like at the end of it be like, what? $8 a month?
I know. They're like, we could have done that.
Yeah.
We could have prevented your vehicle.
There's extra elements involved here. This isn't just a throw-in technology. There is people involved that have to be there to help service this product, make sure it's functioning correctly, all the security measures that are in place. I don't think it's just an add-on, just a throw-in that would be there anyway.
I think
it does justify the extra cost.
They do have what they said is like a 24/7 call center that you could get assistance with if your vehicle was stolen. So I don't know, maybe that's worth the $8 a month to somebody. Obviously that wouldn't be like a standard. Although like with OnStar, that used to be something that you could just get on a vehicle and that was just there. There was always a person that would answer the phone. I don't know. We've seen weird scenarios. I'm going over time here, but like, in the past where like I remember VW getting blasted because somebody was trying to track their stolen vehicle that had their child in it. And then the person on the line was like, sorry, you did not pay for this subscription service.
Yeah.
We are not allowed to track you. Just whatever.
Well, and I think that people might be a little bit more open to paying $2,500 more on the sticker cost than, this reoccurring fee.
It's $96 a year. I know you're the math guy and you knew that already.
No, I understand.
That's different. That's less than $2,500.
I understand that, but I'm just saying like I think that we are approaching a point where people have enough subscriptions everywhere.
Well,
and so
I'm 180 degrees from you on this one.
Yeah, so. I get it, but we'll come around.
I won't, but you can keep trying, I guess.
All right. So how about this one? Next story. Our next story is fatal fire happened because someone bought the wrong valve. On January 8th, 2024, a fire broke out in the engine room aboard the 598-foot-long Stride cargo vessel while it was refueling at a Texas port. 2 crew members lost their lives and another worker was seriously injured. The vessel was a total loss, valued at $12 million, and the company that operated the ship, Denos Shipping Company, scrapped the entire thing. According to the NTSB, the fire was traced to an incorrect valve installed in a pipe leading to a diesel oil tank. About 6 weeks before the fire, a replacement valve was ordered for one of the ship's diesel oil tanks. After the fire, NTSB investigators found the installed part was not the same type specified by the vessel's fuel oil system drawing. As a result of this incorrect valve installation, once diesel fuel filled one tank, it was sent up a common vent line rather than to a different oil tank. In this common vent line, it flowed from a small cutout section of the vent pipe that had been sealed at an unknown time. This flexible sealing and tape covering the cutout failed, and diesel oil started, quote, cascading onto operating machinery. The NTSB couldn't nail down where the patch, when the patch to the cutout section was made, but the report said, quote, at some unknown time in the vessel's 26-year history, a 7-inch by 11-inch section of pipe had been cut out into the top of the vent. The NTSB's report stressed that owners, operators, and crews should carefully note all components of a vessel's drawings and diagrams to make sure spare and replacement parts are ordered. The NTSB said another contributing factor was adequate personnel. The NTSB noted that engine crew members were not monitoring the tank levels as they were being filled as required by the operating company. Basically, they had 3, there were supposed to be 4. Jeff, another surprising example of, I think, workers making it work rather than buying the right part. And also, I think, a story that very easily translates to the manufacturing industry in terms of making sure that you have these mission critical components, replacement parts on hand.
Yeah, I think we need to shift our mindset a little bit. I think we look at these cargo ships as boats.
Yeah.
They're a floating factory is what they are. And I think they face all of the same pressures that you just alluded to that a manufacturing facility would. Number one being time. I mean, we know what supply chains are like right now. We know the pressures that are placed on these cargo ships to deliver on time as quickly as possible. And even knowing that even if you get to your destination when you should, you still don't have a lot of control over terms of how quickly you're going to get unloaded, when you can get back out to get your next load and continue on with that process. Plus, you're dealing with a lot of business continuity issues like weather that you just can't control. Then you look at stuff like fuel costs, again, just ratcheting up your overhead expenses and everything else. And then when you take all of those things that we'd be aware of, some of the things that we don't think about too is a lot of the skills gap dynamics that we associate with manufacturing at the plant is hitting the maritime industry just as hard, if not harder.
Yeah.
They're having an incredibly difficult time finding not only enough people to man these boats, but the right people, the skilled people.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of folks, just like we see in facilities, retiring out and not being able to find new people to bring in.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those same dynamics. And as a result, as we've been talking about here, there's that rush to get something in there so we can get working and get going. And I think that's what had to have happened here. Understanding the NTSB found the root cause, and we won't really know exactly what led to that purchasing decision or the maintenance error, other than thinking it had to be a lot of these environmental concerns that just led to a rush job without, doing the right blocking and tackling, checking the right boxes to make sure you had the right part in place.
Well, and I think it looks the same, but it's not the same sort of situation. And one thing I was curious about is, and I do want to say how, the AI layer could have helped this blocking and tackling incident. Or I was thinking perhaps more stuff like smarter inventory management software programs that we have that could, solve these potential problems and say like, hey, just so you know, you've never needed this part, but you still don't have another one in case one goes bad.
Yeah, I mean, I totally think that tech could have solved this problem, and I am hopeful that as we see applications maturing for an AI layer, that this is one of those areas. I know that, you hear about this so often when a part becomes obsolete or the manufacturer changes or the spec changes or the serial number changes or whatever. You almost need to be advised on it at that point. Like that we see that often in distribution, that people, they get on the phone with a customer service person because they don't know exactly what to order. And if that person is making an assumption based on a similar looking valve, that is very clearly, as Jeff said, a skills gap issue, I think. But what's missing there is just this ability to review or confirm that this is the right thing. So if you don't have that person there anymore because of retirement or wherever this tribal knowledge went, can you use technology to solve that problem? Potentially, I mean, we look back on previous podcasts where we've covered this issue multiple times where something seemingly insignificant, a very small kind of off-the-cuff decision to...
Here's an answer from Collins Dictionary.
Come on.
Yep. AI is working for you. Your AI is already ordering a replacement part.
Forget what I said about technology. Get out of here with that Apple Watch. I think so we've covered this in the past, how a single person's failure has resulted in a catastrophic situation. A lot of times that damage has been just financial. In this case, it was not. It was so much worse than that. Mm-hmm. I think it just illustrates that need for redundancies and things like maintenance and even purchasing. And again, potentially that's a great place for tech to kind of take on that secondary function, the checks and the balances, the blocking and the tackling, to make sure that gets done right.
No, I completely agree. And one of the questions I had was, okay, if you replaced this part 6 weeks ago, why didn't it happen until now? And it was actually just as simple as the crew hadn't used that tank that the valve was on and didn't know that the wrong valve had been ordered and installed. And so, that's another thing where in these emergency situations, even though they had all this training, they didn't know what was going wrong because, they just simply hadn't done that process yet. I don't know. I think that these continue to be good teachable moments. This one had a very catastrophic end, but hopefully, with the new tools and technologies available, things can get better. All right. Matthew, who's joining us live, says that if there is an AI layer that cannot be tampered with.
Fair.
Good point.
Yeah.
Very good point. Yeah. See, we're glad you made it, Matthew. Thanks. All right. Our next most popular story. Trump considered buying used planes to serve as Air Force One amid Boeing delays. President Donald Trump is angry about Boeing's Air Force One delays. Really, Trump has been angry about Air Force One ever since at least December 2016, when he tweeted that costs for the program were, quote, out of control, more than $4 billion, cancel order. Now, Trump says he might buy a used Boeing aircraft from an overseas seller to use as Air Force One. Air Force One currently consists of two nearly 35-year-old Boeing 747-200 aircraft. Trump said, quote, we may go and buy a plane and, quote, convert it. Boeing has the contract to make updated versions of Air Force One based on the Boeing 747-8, but delivery delays have cost the aircraft maker billions. Boeing says the delays have been caused by intense security modifications that make the planes suitable for presidential travel and top-level security clearances. Delivery was initially scheduled for 2024, but now they say that is likely going to happen at some time in 2027, and that's just for the first plane. The second one won't come until Trump's final year in office. Anna, Trump says that he won't switch to Airbus, but is a second-hand Boeing plane really the answer?
I don't know.
I guess maybe if it was owned by a king.
I do appreciate the attempt to look at other options, but there are some potential risks to consider, I think. For one, it seems like it could be a potential national security risk to buy a plane from another country. I don't know. Maybe that seems obvious to us, but I know that they think that they can deal with all this stuff when they get it, but what if it's bugged? What if it's compromised in some way? Can they figure all that out? Do we know that?
I think it's a good question that if the difficulties Boeing is run into the intense security measures they need to put on a brand new plane, it stands to reason that it might be just as difficult to put that on a used plane as well.
It might be. And to undo, I feel like we as a country have been able to justify all kinds of frankly not applicable things in the under the guise of national security. That's constantly it's a national security thing. It's national. It just seems like the one item that the president uses that would basically ensure that person's death if something goes wrong. I don't know. I don't feel like we should be taking chances there. I feel like there should be a lot of caution applied to that process. And I say that while also knowing that, the latest estimate I heard actually was 2029 on that plane.
Oh, okay.
So that's, that contract was signed in 2018. That is 11 years. Like, that is also very hard to justify.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, you can kind of agree that, you know, like, why everyone is just like, okay, this is ridiculous at this point. Like, what do you want us to do?
Yeah.
Sit around and then wait for this plane for 25 years? And then, I mean, that's also crazy. And Boeing said that production has been slowed by supply chain issues, high costs, and the complexity of the plane. Okay. Those things matter, but the timeline for this, I still feel like almost
still excessive.
Yeah, it's excessive, right?
Oh, completely.
So if Boeing in the end like loses out on this deal, you can kind of see why. It doesn't help, I think, that Elon Musk, who's a vocal critic of Boeing, is kind of in the president's ear. Probably not a lot of good things to say about Boeing. But at the same time, you can see how anyone would be frustrated outside of all that. So I get why he's trying to look at other options. I don't think buying a foreign-owned plane from another country is the way.
You know what that solution is then? There's already going to be, someone's already working on a SpaceX Air Force One. It's already got to be in development.
Probably.
And Jeff, I mean, I know I don't joke about that. I feel like that's a real thing, that we could be looking at a SpaceX Air Force One, or let's just say they assume responsibility over the project in some way. Not sure how that would work, but I just don't see there being a lot of other options. And one thing I thought about is, like, you know, Boeing continues to get beat up over this. Like, at some point, I understand they're billions in, but like at some point, do you think Boeing just goes like, we tried?
Well, they can't. I mean, they can't do it. But it's interesting when you look at the history of this contract. Basically, they were willing to take this on as a loss leader. Now, I don't think they anticipated this type of loss, because when they were willing to embrace that, they were making $10 billion a year. So they weren't too worried about it. But as this is drug on, I'm not buying the fact that it comes down to all this complicated communications systems. 42% of their work comes from the U.S. government. There's a lot of DoD stuff in there. They're used to dealing with complex and hyper-secure communications equipment. I think this is just another example of Boeing's inability to physically make stuff right now. Like, they just cannot get planes out the door, and this is their core competency. I can understand how this project could potentially get pushed to the back of the line a little bit because you've got bigger fish, but you've got a big fish in the White House who is not afraid to call anybody out. So it just continues to play really badly for them. It continues to feed into a lot of airlines' concerns over continuing to work with Boeing in the same capacity that they have before, which isn't good for building business. And then when you also look for the increased competition they have within the DoD, when people like Lockheed and everybody else, that also is going to have an impact. So if I was them, I would try to get this done, not just from a cost savings perspective, but from how it's going to impact their business down the line in a lot of other areas. This is just a horrible, horrible look, and it's only going to get worse the longer they drag their feet. Don't tell me it's because of the secure communication stuff. I'm just not buying that.
Well, so that's right. Of all the PR fires that Boeing is putting out right now, it's the CEO from Southwest Airlines or the president of the United States. You know, like, why don't you, when you're working on closing those shadow factories because you have so much high-end talent there, divert everybody to one, you know, get one right and out the door. And because you're right, like, if it is a loss, and that's the best case scenario, is looking at it a loss leader now. But I don't know. I feel like you really need to focus a lot of attention to that. I mean, understanding that, again, Boeing's spinning a lot of plates right now. Doug, who's joining us live, good to see you again, Doug, says, quote, Boeing is toast. An optimistic outlook from Doug, as always. He says that he's surprised he doesn't buy an A380. It will be the biggest and best Air Force One ever, like no other, fit for a king. Think he might have been doing a bit there. But I mean, there's some real, like, when President Trump talks about looking at a used plane, like, he looked at a 13-year-old private aircraft that had been owned by the Qatari royal family while it was parked in Palm Beach. So I get if he's
feel like
maybe drawn in by the allure of it being owned by a king previously.
From a practical perspective, obviously, I don't see the time savings there. Because like Anna said, you have to retrofit everything.
Not.
Well, and Matthew adds, isn't the plane out of date by delivery time? I mean, maybe that's part of the problem, right? Just like, hey, all this stuff that we put in 11 years ago, there's
I mean, that happens in military all the time, that they have to revise and revise and revise. And
you're always playing catch up.
I mean, honestly, we just ran that article today about how they had to do that with very specific version of the gravity nuclear bombs, where they had this entire stockpile of them and they all needed to come in for rework, Not exactly new. All right, our next most popular story. Passenger jet design helped passengers and crew survive a plane crash. If you've seen the videos of the Delta Airlines jet flipping over and catching fire in Toronto, you may too be surprised that everyone survived. However, aviation experts told the AP it was not surprising that all 76 passengers and 4 crew walked away. It's a credit to advances in new plane design and the crew that flawlessly executed an evacuation plan. For example, fuel tanks are stored in the wings, and the wings are designed to break off in a crash to remove a seriously explosive hazard. The plane's tail-like fin breaks off easily so that if the aircraft flips over, it stays flat on the ground and passengers and crew are able to evacuate. Michael McCormick, an assistant professor and program coordinator for air traffic management at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, says, quote, "Aviation is and remains the safest form of transportation. Passenger jet seats are designed to withstand impacts of up to 16 times the force of gravity, and the seatbelt restraints on the passengers who were suspended upside down actually helped keep them in place as the plane slid to a halt." Anna, if anything, I think this crash is also a good reminder, not just of where we've come in terms of aircraft design and survivability, but also that seatbelts really work.
No regrets on seatbelts.
No. We can look in the review on that one and just be like, hey, you know what? We got that one right.
Well, and I'll be honest with you, it never occurred to me that I would ever be upside down in an airplane. So, when they're telling you to put your seatbelt on and you're like,
Yeah.
maybe.
Oh, no. Like, okay, A, The Fugitive, and B, have you never had... Have you... I mean, because I was like, have you never... Oh, wait, no. U.S. Marshals. Okay, either way, same universe. But have you never had the hard stop at an airport? Like, the first time I had one, like, throw me into the other seat, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're just gonna...
I always have my hands up on the tray at the end because I know I'm going to lurch forward. I do use my seatbelt on the plane, but I wasn't always as diligent, I guess. Now I am.
Same.
Well, anyway, yes, I agree that the footage of this plane landing, considering the impact and the fire, like I think when we all saw it, it was just absolutely amazing that everyone survived. And I know that these experts are saying it's not a fluke, but either way, it's incredible to see that happened. And I learned a new word in this article, which was frangible.
Okay. Oh, yeah. The tail.
They described this word as meaning easily broken.
Yes.
So that's by design, those wings designed to be broken off in the tail.
Yep.
That's
frangibility.
Frangibility.
Yes.
Yes, just like an incredible sight to see that take place. A very horrifying and terrifying situation for those folks on board. I will keep this short, but my initial thought when I saw this and read this story about how all these safety features were designed in was just, I think that we often benefit from intrinsically safe devices, and we kind of take that for granted sometimes that those features are there, but many of them are a result of rigorous safety standards.
Oh, yeah.
And regulatory requirements. And so I know not everyone likes rigorous standards and regulatory requirements, but you do when you're on that plane, probably, right? So I think it's an important reminder that when we look at cavalierly kind of cutting red tape or whatever you want to call it, or something that might look redundant to an untrained eye, that redundancy is actually the point. Yeah. And in this place, I think if it targets only the worst case scenario, that's what these people experienced. Yeah. And so I don't know. I just think it's a good reminder of the fact that like sometimes we have to trust that system to work. Yeah. And we may not always see the results of that every day. But man, we did see it, But
I think a big part of that is because there has been this generational shift of multiple generations that have been in this bubble wrapped environment where they don't understand. They didn't live when they didn't have seatbelts, right? You know, I mean, we didn't live when we had seatbelts, really. Like we were right at the beginning of it, but like people don't understand like sort of the I would call them unnecessary risks that people took because there weren't better safety measures on over-the-counter drugs, because there weren't safety belts in cars, you know. And so people have this like sort of feeling that regulations are bad because they're just looking to slow, corporations down and slow down capitalism. And I think a big part of that is because, I don't know, and I don't know if you agree, Jeff, but I think that there is been too much of a gap from when maybe there was too many lax requirements that really put people in danger.
I think that the issue with what you're saying there is that there's been an overcorrection in a lot of situations.
Yeah.
It's not that we refute the fact that regulation in some form is needed or that there needs to be some guidance, whether it's drugs or transportation safety or whatever the case is. It's that it feels in a lot of instances that affect our day-to-day, it went over the top to where getting some of this stuff changed, letting it evolve, making it easier to get things done based on what we've learned is very, very difficult. Yeah. And I think that's where that mindset of not another reg comes into play. Yeah. So I think it's trying to balance somewhere in the middle there, which is the ongoing battle.
Well, and part of that is, there were a lot of regulatory failings with the kind of cozy relationship between the FAA and Boeing as well that, let's say, didn't do any favors there as well either.
No, really interesting story, and that video, is pretty incredible. I think the thing that caught me was the stat where they talked about the seats being tested to 16 times the pressure of gravity.
Crazy.
That really stuck out to me, and it sort of took me, so if you can allow me to sort of take you with me down the rabbit hole I ventured down in some of this testing, it was really interesting to me because a lot of this, whether it's automotive or airlines, a lot of the testing is done through simulation software. It's virtual because that by the time you get to the physical testing, you're not starting over every time. You've got something that you can work with. And the progress that's been made with these software platforms is really incredible. It's not always the sexiest topic. We'll run articles on new developments, new versions of software that have come out to help design engineers save time and improve safety. And it's kind of met with a universal, sure, that's great. What's next? But when you look at where the simulation software came from initially and where it is now and the far-reaching impacts it has is incredible. Really, the first simulation software was designed to study the impacts of nuclear warheads and the impact that it would have. And from there, people saw, wow, we could take this to medical, surgical procedures and try to run it through there and what are the best outcomes. Then it got into automotive and now it's getting into areas like this. So being able to constantly refine this software, it started with something that was very far removed from what we would consider an airline crash, is really remarkable to me. And it's sort of, I know it's become sort of a joke, but it reinforces that whole thing that leads to the thing.
It's not
that's
a joke.
Such a huge part of product development and where you just never know where it's going to go. We talk about a lot of these technologies and we're going, I don't know, I don't get this one. This doesn't fit. Mm-hmm. But there's a part of that that is going to play a role down the line in something very, very significant. And I think that's what we saw demonstrated here very clearly.
It's not a joke. It's a catchphrase. Big difference.
Okay.
Big difference. I wanted to add, Jeff Guzzetti, who is an airline safety consultant and former investigator at the FAA and the NTSB, said, quote, "The odds of getting injured or killed in a commercial airline accident is far less than driving in your car." And I wanted to say that for everybody. Also, I wanted to say that for myself because I am kicking the can on our spring break, booking our spring break airline tickets, because it seems like every time I'm on the website, like another pilot has filmed a plane flipping over. And it's just like, you know what? Thank you, Jeff Guzzetti. We're booking them tonight.
You are going to pay $800 a seat for those. You got to speed up, my friend.
Yeah.
Isn't that in like three?
Spirit Airlines.
Oh.
Spirit Airlines. I'm pretty sure that like my kids can just fly underneath in cages with the dog.
Yeah, I think like just you can put them over.
Yeah.
Hey, this is going to be a great story.
Yeah.
I cannot wait
for sure
to hear the fallout from you taking a family of 4 on Spirit Airlines.
Well, I didn't book the flights. soon enough. So instead of Florida,
So we had to fly out of the Twin Cities, and we connected through Sioux City and then Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And then we got to Florida at like 4 o'clock the next morning.
Yeah. Remember how I said I was going to book those tickets right after episode 209? So I booked them a shade after 211, which was the day before we left.
how's a 24-hour layover
That
sound?
doesn't sound like me, guys. Come on now.
Sure
Never.
doesn't.
I don't know who's watching us live, but they said 62 AMC Rambler, no seatbelts, unsettling. Oh, producer Eric. Yeah, I mean, that's living that life. Yeah, I did that one. It was just, I mean, the idea of getting into a car now without even the option of a seatbelt.
No thanks.
Nope. All right, our next most popular story, and a matter of fact, a most popular story this week, RBW opening U.S. factory to make handmade sports cars based on iconic British designs. RBW EV is a UK manufacturer that makes electric sports cars by hand. For years, RBW made its GT and Roadster models overseas. In late 2023, the company opened a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in England. Last year, the company unveiled its first left-hand drive models designed for U.S. consumers. Now, the left-hand drive GT and Roadster models will be made in Danville, Virginia, at RBW's new $8 million U.S. factory set to open September of this year. Peter Swain, CEO of RBW, told me that the company wanted to establish a local assembly presence. Peter said the new Virginia facility is expected to create 50 to 100 jobs initially, adding up to 200 new positions if everything goes according to plan. Swain says he picked Virginia because of the state's established manufacturing ecosystem, highly skilled workforce, and strategic location for North American distribution. Swain says RBW has already been training U.S. operatives in its UK facility. The market for these hand-built classic cars is primarily collectors and enthusiasts, people who want a blend of heritage design with modern EV technology. And depending on the model and customizations, prices are going to vary, but it's going to start around $140,000. Both models have a 150-mile range, can go from 0 to 60 in 8 seconds, and have an electronically limited 90-mile-per-hour top speed. Each vehicle is meticulously crafted with build times averaging around 500 hours per car. And I think we need to understand that these are very beautiful automobiles that may, let's just say, put design ahead of capability.
Yeah, like big time.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, so I get that they say the market is collectors and enthusiasts, customers who want a blend of heritage design with modern EV technology, I believe you said.
Yeah.
But this is not modern EV technology.
Yeah.
This is so you look at the Roadster and the GT, like you mentioned, 150-mile range, 0 to 60 in 8 seconds. That's like very bottom end
slow.
on range. And yeah, like 0 to 60, you could go faster in like a Chevy Suburban for real. I mean, that's like very slow. And for an EV, that's really slow.
Yeah.
So I kind of don't get that. Plus the electronically limited 90 mile per hour top speed. So obviously the idea here is not performance.
Yeah.
So you kind of wonder how much that limits the pool of buyers. When you have a sports car that has like no get up and go whatsoever. So the CEO was interviewed recently by Road and Track, and he said, quote, everyone is obsessed with numbers, but there has to be a market for people who understand balance, the importance of lightweight, and the pure entertainment of a sports car with a 50-50 weight distribution. People who understand balance.
Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, there was a big part of the story as well when they were talking about the overall design was, just that I think they're going more for, let's say, elegance than need for speed.
So like rich people puttering around, I guess. I don't know. It just seems
It'll
like.
be great at the villages.
Yeah. It just seems like I don't know, low volume forever. Maybe that's their plan, but like in America, I don't know about this. It just doesn't, it's like, it's an expensive car with like, there's no excitement to it whatsoever. They're cool looking, I guess, but it's like $140,000 Power Wheels, basically. Like there's just, So got
your Power Wheels are off the chain.
It's got the torque of a golf cart. I
can just imagine Anna going to see her neighbor, and they're like super psyched about this European sports car. And she's like, you spent $140,000 on a Power Wheel?
Yeah.
They're just
I think it's when you're gearing it towards the collector who has everything. I think this is more on, this is going after style than performance. And it's also going after the people that are taking old vehicles and then remaking them with modern EV design.
Right. But again, that's not, there's just not.
I think I get your point.
Yeah.
But just being not even close to this type of community, but just being adjacent to it in a lot of ways, there is a real community out there for people who love this European style, whether it's cars, motorcycles, whatever it is. It's not about being able to go 120 miles. It's about the look and feel of handling and driving that vehicle. Yeah. So I do feel like there is a market out there. I think they top out around 300 cars a year, something like that. So they're going real focused on this.
Yeah.
But when you look at sort of the growth, EV growth is there. The custom vehicle market is going to grow by like 30% over the next 10 years. So people are they're in up to their elbow on getting something that is unique to them. Never underestimate a gearhead's propensity to spend money on something that is custom to them.
Oh, yeah.
I get that. I just, without the performance element, I feel like you take a lot of people out of
There is no practical element to this. There's not.
We're talking about people with disposable $140,000 for a toy, right?
So, it's very interesting. The fact that they've found the funds to do this, you're giving these, if it's 100 people or 200 people, probably their dream job. This would be an incredible work.
Yeah.
To be doing this, sort of combining this newer technology, not cutting edge electric vehicle technology, but newer stuff with the old school design element. That is a dream for a lot of people to be working on that type of vehicle. And I would think from an owner perspective, the EV element is probably very appealing because there's less maintenance. Yeah. There's less to worry about from a breaking down perspective, a little bit fewer mechanical issues than with an internal combustion engine or something that would be legitimately that old to be running on the road. So yes, it's a lot, but you're actually getting a runner. This is a vehicle that's meant to drive. So
well, and Anna, to your point, if you want to make the, I just can't believe that this is Anna's take. But honestly, if you want to compare it to a golf cart, it might have that.
Hey, it's still going 90 miles an hour.
True. No, I understand. But just in terms of how frequently it's used,
like 15 minutes.
The ability to plug it in,
15 minutes.
The ease of use, and producer Eric agrees with you, Jeff. Never underestimates exclusivity and what that does for people. And it does, to your point, Jeff. It also really reminds me of I think it was last year, maybe a year before that. We did the big story about the manufacturer that went to the 4-day work week, and they were working on very exclusive high-end RVs, and they're all just like, "Yeah, it's pretty great here." So at least it's 100, maybe 200 really cool jobs for engineers out there.
Yeah, this company just got $12 million in joint venture money too. So there's a couple people believing in them.
Yeah. One cool point about this story that I really enjoyed was that, so it is nearly an 8-year-old family business. The family is really important to CEO Peter Swain. The company's name is RBW because his children are Rose, Becky, and Wesley. And I think that is just really cool.
They say joint venture. I meant private equity. I'm sorry. Private equity money. Yeah, investor.
Doug does agree with you, Anna, saying it's a fancy golf cart and at least they won't leak oil.
He's not wrong.
All right. Another word from our sponsor before we jump into In Case You Missed It. This week's episode is brought to you by ShopVue. Managers and engineers face a wide variety of obstacles on the plant floor that weaken productivity. The root of these problems can often be tied to reliance on outdated data. Using yesterday's information to make today's decisions simply won't cut it. So download Benefits of Real-Time Production Monitoring in Manufacturing to find out why real-time production monitoring is becoming a must-have for manufacturers. All right, in case you missed it, the stories that maybe weren't as popular on our website, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward, or maybe not. And with that, I'll go first. Alef conducts first test of flying car or flying drive and vertical takeoff in a city. Alef Aeronautics is trying to make a flying car. Last week, the company announced that it successfully conducted a flight test of its flying car in a city environment. Sort of. Alef released videos of the test, making it the first ever video in history of a car driving and vertically taking off. While previous videos exist of cars driving and using a runway to take off, videos of tethered flights and eVTOL flying taxis taking off, this is the first publicly released video of a car driving and taking off vertically. And again, kind of, sort of, because this test was conducted with thorough safety measures, ensuring that the road was closed off during the flight test. No people were near or around the flight path, and it wasn't densely populated. All this safety equipment and personnel were presented. The only thing was that this was a special lightweight version of the Alef Model 0. And I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at the videos, but this just really reminded me of like a movie prop, or maybe a kit car. I don't know. When I think of the future of urban mobility, I think flying cars will be a part of it. And I think that it's great to continue to capture the imagination of people. But sometimes when you essentially put like a lightweight shell that would be kind of a cool top to a monster truck on like essentially a few fans and maybe 2 bikes.
It doesn't feel right.
It doesn't feel right. And I think when you tell people to check it out and watch it, and then they watch it and they go, oh, that's not a future I want, maybe it tends to set back the industry and expectations a little bit. I don't know, Anna, if you had a chance to look at this video, but I was just like, I don't know. You look at the tires.
Yeah.
You look at the frame and you're just like, I mean, ultralight.
I know.
Is being quite courteous.
When I saw the stills, the first thing I could think of was like the General Lee at that part where they would pause and then the guy would talk.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like to me. Just like, and now the boys were really into something big. Like, like you're right. It looks weird.
Yeah. I mean, yes. Did they make history? Yes. Did it advance the industry? I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, you know me, I'm pretty bearish on flying cars. It's not my thing. I just don't think that it's necessary or practical, or I just don't think it's that useful tech.
Yeah.
But it didn't change my mind, I'll tell you that.
Understood. Jeff, did you have a chance to check out this story? And would you classify what you saw as a car?
Yeah, fair. You know, I mean, try to give them where I think this could actually hurt them more when you look at this, because it doesn't look right.
Yeah.
It just does not look the way you'd want a working prototype, which is I think is maybe what they're trying to go with here.
Yeah.
I think it would hurt them if they're looking to raise funds. I'm sure they were very excited to get this, pardon the pun, up and running.
Yeah.
But I think it could potentially hurt their cause more than help it. I think they should have waited a little bit, especially when you look at just the design of this vessel, this vehicle, aircraft, whatever we're going with. I think they could have done a lot more to help themselves, and I think they may have hurt themselves with what they're showing here.
And I get it. You know, they have more than 3,300 pre-orders that they've taken, and they want to let people know it's advancing. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe if I got a pre-order out there and this video comes out, I'm just like, where's the cancel button? You know, Doug Hatch says that the real test is going to be taking off from an LA traffic jam and just saying, see ya. And agreed. And hey, if you're in LA traffic, I mean, I guess you don't need to go fast. So, I mean, if you're just scooting along in this thing.
You know, one of the issues that if this ever comes into more of a mainstream dynamic, but the Takeoff, there was a lot of dust and debris that was sort of flying all over the place too. So if you are in a LA traffic jam or any place else and you look to vertically take off, people better know to roll their windows up or something, because I mean, it's like that looks like it's actually an initial safety issue.
Oh, yeah, it is. I read an article about this like a couple months ago where they were talking about how high the actual blowback is from the winds that are produced by an eVTOL. Mm-hmm. So they have not figured out how to solve that problem yet, but it is enough to, like, if you're close enough, knock you over.
Oh wow.
So probably should figure that out.
Yeah, no, it's significant. So I just, you know, I would like to see a future where there is a working urban air mobility market, and I hope we keep moving forward. Anna, what's your in case you missed it this week?
I hope we don't move forward. I selected a story about an EV that I am actually excited about
Very good.
Compared to the RBW.
Keep throwing shade.
Yeah, I need to.
That's because she's anti-jobs, remember?
Yeah.
Whoa.
They're going to create jobs here, and there she's like, free.
Yeah.
I'm not about to pause.
You're creating jobs and you're doing so with a low-cost facility. How dare you do it
That is
economically?
not on board.
Yeah, I'm like the Kevin O'Leary of this panel. I'm just gonna knock everything down.
That's right.
No, I picked a story about Mercedes-Benz. They just unveiled an EV prototype that's sporting a solid-state battery, and it has massive range. So I thought that was cool. So anyway, the details around it was, so they were working in collaboration with Factorial Cell engineers to deliver an all-new solid-state battery test program. This is the first car powered by a lithium metal solid-state battery on the road. After testing, the prototype was integrated into a Mercedes-Benz EQS sedan, and they say that the solid-state technology reduces the weight of the battery and has potential to increase the gravimetric energy density for the vehicle. So it's going to increase its electric range, and in this development vehicle, they're expecting the range to be over 621 miles.
Whoa.
Yeah. So over the next few months, Mercedes will continue its evaluation of the solid-state battery with extensive laboratory and road tests, noting its overall performance in an electric vehicle. So I picked this story because I think it's an interesting moment in time when it comes to EVs and especially EV range. You're seeing the Trump administration try to defund some of these programs that were developed to create more cross-country public infrastructure for EV charging. This is, the charging industry is clearly not even close to maturity. There's still a lot of research about demand levels for EV charging stations along major highways, and we're not even close to that at this point in time. So it would be interesting to see what happens next in terms of what automakers do. Because I think a lot of them are still saying, we do want to sell electric vehicles. We put billions of dollars into their development.
Yeah.
The market is expected to grow. Like, we want to move forward. So does the focus then become developing and scaling these much more robust batteries with a range that, frankly, is hard to argue with? I feel like when you're at 600 plus, you're kind of on the high end for anybody.
Yeah.
And we know that these solid-state batteries have a lot of promise. They are less prone to thermal runaways. Mm-hmm. They're more stable, and so they can charge more quickly. I think that's another thing. So they kind of like knock down some of those barriers that the EV industry has had to deal with in the past. And so, personally, I hope that EV development can maintain like the momentum that it has established over the last couple years, despite some of the changes that seem to be targeting this type of vehicle specifically, because it seems like technology is really on the cusp of like breaking through, especially when it comes to batteries, that we could see some really amazing range improvements that would, I think, change some people's minds about it.
No, I agree. I too feel like we're right there, and there being major breakthroughs when it comes to EV technology. And I think that there is just a base business case for how you can make an EV a little bit more in a fully automated, cost-effective way, and that is going to drive interest from car manufacturers, regardless of how the rules might be changing. Jeff, when you look at a story like this, are you intrigued, or are you already dancing on the EV grave?
Oh, no. I mean, I'm on board. The EVs are coming. I mean, my wife and I are looking at a different vehicle. We're having that EV conversation, see if it makes sense, what's available, that type of thing. So I think what caught me here is it's an approach, a strategy that is looking to basically head off a lot of the objections that are coming from consumers right now for electric vehicles. Number one is range.
Yeah.
Okay. Number two, I think when they really get into it, it's sort of interrelated to range, but it's cost, long-term cost for the battery.
Yeah.
And then safety. When we talk about heat. And really with this passive cooling system that it's talking about for the battery, it answers all of those concerns. Mm-hmm. It gives you a longer range. It gives you a longer lasting battery because you don't have that heat constantly degrading it. So it should last longer and therefore keep those long-term maintenance costs down. So it is exciting. I think what's interesting when you look at this battery technology, is this going to be something that they look to implement across the board for all of their offerings? Is it going to be for the higher end vehicles? How are they going to manage that? But even that doesn't bother me because over time, that'll come down. Mm-hmm. It'll shift and be available more widely spread.
And that is another part of the time that we're in, just in terms of how quickly things are changing, when they're going to, let's say, pick the winner and run with it and then figure out what's going to be in subsequent generations. Just because, I don't know, I think this is extremely viable. And I mean, I guess, we all know it already, but gravimetric energy density is the measure of how much energy is stored per unit of mass. But, I'm just preaching to the choir here.
Yeah.
Jeff, what's your, in case you missed it this week?
Well, you guys had such uplifting stories. I'm going to bring it down a little bit here.
Yeah,
Bring it
right at the
down.
end.
Yeah. So I picked a story talking about the U.S. Dockworkers approving a 6-year contract and averting a strike. So
How's that bringing it down?
I'll get there.
All right.
Who's anti-jobs now? I just want to say that.
So we can remember this started last fall. Basically, they had the 3-day strike. We had Harold Daggett offer the ever popular quote of promising to cripple us by shutting down the docks. Basically, they agreed to a 6-year contract here, avoiding a strike. This was described as the gold standard for dock worker contracts here. The biggest part of that is that they're raising pay by 62% over these 6 years, from $39 to $63 an hour. Now, the other part of this, and probably the more contentious part of it, was when we talk about automation.
Yeah.
And talking about this. So the new contract gives ports more leeway to introduce modernizing technology, but they have to hire workers when they do, and full automation is off the table.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
What does that mean exactly?
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, as we've got more stress and more strain being put on our supply chain all the time, we're looking at tariffs potentially already increasing costs for goods coming into this country. Now we potentially have to worry about things taking longer to get to where they need to be once they arrive at the port, because we're reducing the level of automation. I don't see that happening. I really don't. Also, when we talk about adding people, when you add automation, that should be part of the mix.
Yeah.
It should be the ability to use your resources more intelligently so that they're not doing a lot of these, mechanical tasks. They're doing more problem solving. They're doing more things to make your whole operation more efficient. But the reality is, just because you add automation doesn't mean you can always justify adding people as well. Ideally, you're using your current number of people to optimize your entire operation.
Yeah.
I see this creeping up again very quickly.
Yeah.
I don't see this as a resolution. I see the port operator saying, you're not going to stop me from bringing in more cranes. You're not going to stop me from bringing in more conveying technology that makes it easier and quicker to offload these boats, get it on the truck, and get it out of here.
Yeah.
I just can't see that happening. So to say that this is I would say this is better than a stopgap, okay?
Yeah.
It's given people a lot of positive things to work at, but I think this particular issue, when it comes to automation at the ports, is far from over.
But I think they left the window for greater up to fully automation. And I think there's a lot to argue about what's fully automated, right? I think of like Desmond in the bottom of the at the bottom of the island in Lost, right? Where he just had to hit the button like once
Spoiler.
every...
I was getting to it.
Or let's say, okay, Homer Simpson, Homer Simpson, where his job is to like hit the button once a day, that's not fully automation.
I appreciate that, but we're also talking about the guy who said, I'm going to cripple you.
Shut it down. I mean, I understand. I think it's good that there was this contract. I think that it was good that we averted a strike, but I also think that everyone understands there is an inevitability when it comes to a more fully automated
But at what
port
level
situation.
are they going to allow that?
Yeah.
Because they've got a contract right here that says one thing. Granted, it can be interpreted a number of ways.
Yeah.
I'm glad they got paid. I see this creeping up again.
Oh,
Sorry.
Yeah. Incrementally. Anna, your thoughts on the new deal for the dock workers?
I mean, I think you're both saying the same thing, essentially, that there is some gray area to exploit here and that they will exploit it.
Yeah.
But I don't think either that it's the worst thing. You can't kneecap an entire industry because you don't like the idea of it. I mean, one of the things the article said was that that U.S. ports were falling behind other global ports because they weren't incorporating this technology that was needed to make things move more quickly and more efficiently. And if we fall behind, then what happens?
Yeah.
Then you don't have a job also because less product comes through. It doesn't make any sense. It's just it's sort of an inevitability. That's like saying, what if factories were saying that same thing? I know people were worried about
They were like 20 or 30 years ago.
Right, but yeah, but if they had, put these contracts in place that said that these factories couldn't incorporate any automation technologies, then those factories would be closed.
I feel like I don't have an example, but I feel like that happened. That there were rules where they couldn't keep up with the times, and as a result, nobody won. But I don't know. So no, Jeff, that's not a downer. It's not a downer. You're being a realist.
It's a warning.
It's a warning.
It's a heads up.
A little fear mongering. All right. Well, let's do our final thought before we get out of here this week. Anna, what's your final thought? Oh, did you have it? Yeah.
Not really.
What are you thinking?
I don't know. It's been like a busy couple of weeks, and I look forward to another busy weekend.
You had mentioned about supporting Girl Scouts last week. How was the first week on the streets gone for the Girl Scouts? It's
been great. In fact, I really was sort of heartened when we had some conversations with complete strangers. Like the girls had a little booth on Saturday at a business. And, some people were like just so crazy generous, and they're like, I'm diabetic. I can't have Girl Scout cookies, but we have a partner program that we work with for, extra funding and people were like donating money to that, even though they weren't buying cookies, or somebody gave us money and said,
give them to somebody.
Give them to somebody. Yeah. And just like, it was really nice to see just how kind people were. And you kind of forget about that sometimes when you we sit at our laptops and read the news cycle all day long. And sometimes you're just like, man, everyone's so horrible and mean.
Yeah.
It was nice to talk to some strangers for a while, honestly.
That really is something that we need to do more of, like interacting with friends, neighbors, strangers, and just so that way you can remember that there is good in all of us, not just the fear mongering that's in the ongoing cycle.
Yeah.
One thing I'm curious about. So when people said to give them to somebody, so I've done this before with Girl and Boy Scout sales. Did you give them to somebody?
So we just put that money into our Cookie Share program, which is for the organization that we work with. So in the end, those boxes of cookies go to, it's like a youth shelter for homeless teens in our town. So,
I can get on board with that.
Yeah, exactly.
How dare they not just give it to some random customer?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, no, that works.
Yeah.
That's good. So my final thought was just this last weekend for us, I'm kind of the dad that always wants to be doing something. Like, we got to go see something. We got to go do something. We got to get our hands in the dirt. We got to stay busy. And so you can experience this world and adapt to it and be ready for it. And Saturday, we didn't. Saturday, we got up and we put on a movie, and then we laid on the couch. And then we put on another movie, and then we put on another movie. And all of us just sat on the couch in various different versions of who's going to be laying on top of one another. And, we're going to switch, and it's your turn to lay on daddy because he's cozier and warmer just because, I run hot. And it was great. And
those are the best days.
I think it was just a good reminder. And I don't know that we have ever done that in the 6 years that we've been parents, where we just shut it down for a day and had like a full movie day. And I initially, it took the first half of the day for the guilt to kind of wash off of just, we're just going to be lazy. And it was great. I think that the kids really enjoyed it as well, because they keep asking when the next one is. And just a reminder that, you don't have to have this go, go, go attitude all the time. You can still have very quality family time, keeping it low key, and consuming every movie that was made in the last year for children. Jeff, what's your final thought this week?
I can remember showing the girls Star Wars for the first time on that kind of day.
Yeah.
And it just blew their minds. It was pretty cool.
What age?
Just watched them all?
What age did they like? Sorry.
Boy. 6 and 8, 7, 9, something like that.
Oh, it can happen.
Yeah. Yes. Just blew their minds. They loved it. It was cool. My closing thought was actually, talking to my youngest daughter, who's now in college. So we're in different places here a little bit. But she was talking about, being stressed out, studying, and what they do at night then to wind down. You will never guess what show they are watching.
The OC.
It's worse than that.
Okay.
It's the Jersey Shore.
No.
Whoa,
they're watching.
Get them out of there.
Jersey
Get them out of there.
To wind down. And,
Gym Tan Laundry.
Oh, boy. And I'm trying to throw some shade at this, but I remember the garbage that I watched in college, and I was actually watching WWE wrestling at the time. So I can't really be too critical, but that did make me laugh to see that was the show that got recycled.
That's awesome.
You got to decompress somehow.
Whatever works.
I mean, I think that me and a bunch of guys all got busted out once because we were watching like a Felicity marathon in our dorm room, and it was just like someone walked in who was like, "Don't look at us!" Like, so everyone has something.
I think it was Dawson's Creek when I was in college.
Yeah.
Three dudes just drinking Busch Light and watching Dawson's Creek. Yeah, it was great.
I kind of want to do that right now.
It doesn't sound bad. I haven't watched
not Busch Light. I don't think I can do that. But
no,
I could not drink Busch Light anymore.
I would do like Felicity and a seltzer night.
Actually, it was probably Miller High Life Light. That was actually what we drank. But.
All right. Well, before we get out of here and everyone gets to decompress in whatever way they choose, everyone's welcome. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email any of us, you can reach us at Jeff, Anna, or David at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join Matthew and Doug and everyone that's in the live chat during the episode. We really appreciate the feedback, and it certainly adds another element to the podcast. All right, for Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.